This time on The Handle. Learn what the 2020 census is and how your response matters to your community.
If someone ever came to my door or asking me about my household, I didn't know, well, why do you want to know this stuff? I didn't know what it would lead to in the future.
Hear how the nationwide survey affects the services you and your neighbors receive.
So everything from 911 dollars to workforce development dollars to community development block grants are actually allocated based on the population of a region or a state.
Plus, community advocates share how critical your voice is in the process.
We must do and be involved with the census count because that's where those critical dollars are, and we need that money to make sure that our community can thrive like the rest of Amarillo is.
All of this right now on Panhandle PBS as we tell the stories of the Texas Panhandle.
Hello, I'm Karen Welch. You may have seen this lately in your mailbox. It's an invitation from the U.S. Census Bureau, and it asks you to participate in a survey that can have great consequences for the local governments, nonprofits, and quality of life here in the Texas Panhandle. The Bureau sends the invites to 95% of households in the country. The 2020 census intends to count everyone living in the United States on April 1st, and the demographics data it collects affects your representation in Washington, D.C., and the distribution of nearly $700 billion in federal funds.
It's a very simple task to do that we do every 10 years, right? But it's a very important one.
2020 Census Invitations refer to a website, give a telephone number to call, or include a paper questionnaire to fill out. New this year is the ability to submit your answers online. Federal law requires that everyone living in the United States respond. If you haven't responded yet, you will receive postcard reminders.
So if they were like me before I came to work here, they probably thought that the census was just to come up with those numbers on the little green signs outside of every town that tells what the population is. That's only one very small part of it.
Traditionally, the Census Bureau also follows up by sending census workers to visit non-responding households. In the wake of the coronavirus pandemic, the Bureau recently announced it continues to monitor Centers for Disease Control guidance and adjust its operations accordingly. The Bureau emphasized that online, phone, and mail responses can be completed without the need to meet a census taker. By mid-March, more than 5 million households have responded through the website. Let's talk about how that works.
It takes about 10 minutes to do it online. I did mine, it was easy. It's just basic count of how many people live in your house, what kind of house it is, the ages of the people, things like that.
This year, the Bureau offers more language support for the census than ever before. English and Spanish, of course, but also materials in nearly 60 languages can be accessed. Updating the population count through the census determines your representation in Washington, D.C. The U.S. House of Representatives has 435 seats. States with smaller populations get at least one, while states with larger populations might get more. Texas has 36 seats, but the state is growing, so more House seats for the Lone Star State are projected. In addition, the demographic data the census gathers helps governments make spending decisions that matter to you and your community.
Here at the Panhandle Regional Planning Commission, we have the opportunity to work with a lot of different federal and state funding streams, and a lot of those funding streams actually base the allocation of funds on population numbers. So a region that has more population may receive more funds, and a region that has less population may receive fewer dollars. So everything from 911 dollars to workforce development dollars to community development block grants are actually allocated based on the population of a region or a state.
Among other things, those funds provide housing help for struggling families, vocational retraining for displaced workers, and loans for rural businesses. They pay for water systems and roads and food for people who are hungry.
The federal funding that really benefits the Wesley Community Center is the federal lunch program. So this offers a free and reduced rate for our child care program, our after school program, and also our summer camp program. We service over 250 children through these programs each year, and so that's able to help us provide meals for our children. With the federal funding, we have applied to the Community Development Block Grant. And so with that funding, we've been able to do some improvements to the center. We've improved our restrooms. Over 10 restrooms have been remodeled throughout the years. And also this past year, we were able to expand upon our parking lots. We constructed a new parking lot and we remodeled an existing parking lot and have been able to expand upon our handicapped parking for the elderly in our community that utilize our services.
When it comes to food insecurity, it's estimated here in the Texas Panhandle, 1 in 7 folks are going without, putting something on the table at some point or another throughout the day. So that's about 66,000 or so folks in the Texas Panhandle of a population of roughly 475,000 or so. And so it's a startling number. Last year we distributed over 9 million pounds of food to the Texas Panhandle, which is a record amount of food we've sent out in 1 year since we opened our doors in 1982. It's a growing issue, especially as our population that we serve continues to age. And rely more and more on fixed incomes. And also, we have a lot of issues that we deal with in our service area where there may not even, be employment opportunities enough to, make a living wage and survive. We see that a lot in our rural communities. Underemployment is a growing issue. If we don't know who is living in our areas, if we don't know is an area decreasing or increasing, then it makes it problematic to help serve in many different ways. And of course that also hinges on a lot of assistance programs that we help folks utilize here through the food bank, where it may not be a direct food distribution out the door. There are a lot of assistance programs such as food stamps that help meet that need.
I work for Panhandle Community Services. I'm a dispatcher. We do rural transportation for 26 counties of the Texas Panhandle. Basically, we are funded by grants, and those grants are how we get the monies to do the programs like LIHEAP, utility assistance, HUD, weatherization, even transportation. We take Medicaid patients to and from doctors all over the Texas Panhandle. We also have routes in certain towns. We have local buses in, for instance, Pampa, Dumas, Childress, things of that nature, Borger. So those, we take people to work also. I mean, anybody can ride. We just need 24 hours notice. The RSVP program is another program that we have, and it's the Retired Seniors Volunteer Program. They go to senior centers and help out. They do Meals on Wheels. They help deliver meals to seniors in the rural communities as well. That's another big part of Panhandle Community Services. Meals on Wheels, all of those programs are run by grants, that come from the numbers from the census.
Experts say an accurate 2020 count across the nation could be in jeopardy. A George Washington University study found that if the undercount in Texas is just 1% more than it was in the 2010 census, the state could lose about $300 billion in 5 programs alone: Medicaid, the Children's Health Insurance Program, adoption assistance, child care, and foster care. The Texas Medical Association says such a loss would weaken services in rural areas, low-income communities, and among immigrants, the homeless, and minority populations. The Census Bureau estimates 1 million children ages 5 or younger were missed in 2010 for various reasons. Children who split time between 2 homes or live with another relative, for example, should be counted where they reside, but often are not. And newborns still in the hospital also get missed, yet should be counted as if they are home.
By not having an accurate count and not knowing where the children are, we can't provide the services for them. We have medical services, dental services, we have family support services that we offer families and children. We have 1,341 Head Start children in our program, and we have 344 children in early Head Start. We start at birth and we go all the way up to 4 years old. We know that early intervention is key in getting those families and those children the services that they need to be successful in school and in life.
Rosatina Harrow credits Head Start for preparing her children for school.
I didn't know very much about the census or what happens after they collect all that data. I never knew that. If someone ever came to my door or asking me about my household, I didn't know, well, why do you want to know this stuff? I didn't know what it would lead to in the future. And so now knowing that it does affect this program, or that it could affect the program, it is very important.
Historically, there are segments of the population and neighborhoods in Amarillo where people haven't used their voices by completing the census. That's a fact that some hope to change.
African Americans are traditionally one of the most undercounted populations during the census time. And so how that affects us is that it reduces the amount of funding that our neighborhoods get. So that reduces the programming that we can offer and the impact that we can have. I think it has a lot to do with people feeling that their voice is not going to be heard, that nothing is going to change. I think we see a lack of hope within our community. And that leads to then the not voting and the not wanting to be counted, because it's like, why should I? Why should I even care? And that is one of the most detrimental mentalities that a community could have. Building relationships, talking to them about the census and the impact that it's going to have on them specifically, I think is very important. If we're not being counted, then they think, well, why would we funnel money into a place that there's no one there? And so that's one of the ways that our voice has to be heard. We must get to the polls. We must do and be involved with the census count, because that's where those critical dollars are. And we need that money to make sure that our community can thrive like the rest of Amarillo is.
What did you learn about the census that surprised you?
The surprising was the numbers from the 2010 census and how little people were counted. I mean, there was no representation, especially Moore, Hall, Dallam County. It's like nobody lives over there. And, we all know they do. So, I mean, that I was just really shocked at. And it's just the money that's left on the table that the federal government, they just, they don't give it to us, so it doesn't get used, and that's money that we're missing out on that could go to very good use.
An undercount also is feared, specifically among Hispanic residents, after the idea of asking about citizenship was floated by the Trump administration before the U.S. Supreme Court intervened.
Since the question was tabled, we have not heard concern. But back when it became an issue, it was of a concern because the current administration seems to target the immigrant population, whether they're in the legal process or not. A lot of my client base is undocumented. They're either waiting years to get their status, because the process can take years to get a green card or a work visa or what have you.
The U.S. Census Bureau is bound by law to keep your information confidential. Under the law, the Bureau cannot release any identifiable information about you, your home, or your business, even to law enforcement agencies. Violating the law is a federal crime, punishable by prison time and a fine of as much as $250,000. But during the recent debate about a citizenship question, news reports showed information from the 1940 census was used to identify Japanese Americans. An estimated 120,000 Japanese Americans were sent to internment camps following the bombing of Pearl Harbor in 1941, according to the reporting. A Washington Post report showed the Second War Powers Act of 1942 suspended confidentiality protections for census data.
The goal of the census is to count persons, not citizens, not residents, not undocumented people, persons, for many federal programs and for purposes of representation. And so when you overburden a community with a question that is meant to enforce some other law, like the Voting Rights Act, or to be used for other purposes, and that information might be shared with multiple agencies, it prevents that community from adequately responding, which means that any community from a rural area to a large city who has any immigrants, legal or not, in their population, they don't receive the right kind of funding from the federal government, and they're underrepresented. Even if there are rules, regulations, laws preventing the sharing between agencies, people aren't going to believe them, and that is going to filter down into the community and be understood correctly or not. I always counsel clients to follow the law, right? And I will answer their questions to the best of my ability. But can I promise them the government's not going to share the information? No, because I'm not sure myself, right? So will that client leave my office and answer the questions? Maybe, but probably not. And not only will they not answer that question, they may not answer any of the questions, which means that there's definitely going to be an undercount.
For questions about the security of online census submission, we turn to David Doan, President and CEO of Axigent Technologies Group in Amarillo. What should people know about that process and how secure, I guess, a government collection website can be?
Yeah, I mean, they've been doing taxes online now for many years, and that's seemed to be okay, but I don't know that data is any more or less valuable than people's actual personal data. But the thing to me is, people give this information out freely already. The same information you're giving for the census, you give to social media. So do you trust your government more than you trust Facebook or Twitter or, any of those kind of sites? Because most of the time you're giving that same information up in exchange for, connectivity to advertisers and friends and family and stuff like that.
Doan said there are always things that could go wrong, using the Obamacare website crash as an example. In that case, users overwhelmed the site. Plus, hackers are ever present.
But I mean, most websites, they have systems in place to mitigate that kind of thing. So, but this is one of those things where it's like the site's only going to be online for a certain amount of time. We're looking to collect all this data in this time period.
The Census Bureau says its IT systems are designed to defend against and contain cyber threats.
Probably do it online, just for convenience. And I think that's probably most of what the general population is going to be, in that same boat as well.
The 2020 census is widely expected to show Amarillo's population has topped 200,000 people. Passing that mark potentially could increase the metro area's access to funds.
And I have the privilege of serving as chair of the board of the St. Anthony's Legacy and Redevelopment Corporation, which is trying to turn that old hospital into something that's really functional and a multi-use facility that will be an economic engine for that part of the city and beyond. First of all, because it was an old hospital, we have to totally redo the utilities, which is huge. And it makes sense probably to divide it into 3 separate buildings. And the one project that we're going after that relates to the census is the east side, which is the oldest part of the building. The North Heights really is short of affordable housing for seniors. And so we're going for federal tax credits to turn that into a housing project for seniors. So the way federal tax credits work is that they're set up for regions, and they're rural and urban, and urban regions are considered 200,000 people or more. Lubbock is over. We're marginally under, like 2,000 under. And so we lost those tax credits because of that last year. And so we will qualify this year, but it's that kind of thing that makes the census really important.
The metro area's access to public transit and transportation funding could also be affected by hitting the threshold of 200,000 in population.
The Texas Department of Transportation's Amarillo District, along with the City of Amarillo, Potter and Randall Counties, and most recently the City of Canyon, make up the Amarillo MPO, or Metropolitan Planning Organization. Right now we're a rural MPO. To become an urban MPO, I do believe the threshold is we have to get to over 200,000 in the next census. That's why it's imperative that everyone takes this seriously, especially if you'll rely on roads, you rely on bridges. If you're someone who relies on public transit, you're going to have a very keen interest in taking this census data to heart and participating.
In addition to collecting population data, every 10 years, the Census Bureau gathers more detailed information from a small, randomly selected portion of U.S. households every month. And it is that monthly assessment, called the American Community Survey, that provides information especially useful to businesses and job creators. The survey asks questions not on the census questionnaire, such as education, employment, internet access, and transportation. The West Texas A&M University Small Business Development Center relies on ACS data to help entrepreneurs prepare business plans and financing applications.
Here at the SBDC, the census really affects us in two different ways. Those population numbers do come into play because we receive federal funding. That funding is allocated based on population. So if we have people who don't fill out that census packet, and if our census numbers go down or even don't increase a whole lot, it absolutely affects operations at the SBDC. It could be a reduction in service, even a reduction in staff. So it directly impacts our operations, but it also impacts our clients. There's just a myriad of information that's collected through those census surveys. The one that we use the most with clients is the American Census Survey. I have a client that I'm working with right now. He actually just texted me a little bit ago to let me know that he received the funding that we applied for. Part of the reason that he received that funding was because of information that we used in his business plan that came directly from the American Survey. So long as people are filling out those forms, we may be able to use that data to prove that there's a community that needs a grocery store, or there's a community that has enough population. They've got the certain mix of demographics that we're looking at as far as age and income to show that they need, might be a convenience store, it might be a bookstore, whatever it might be. We're able to dig down deep and pull that demographic information, and it's vital for clients.
The Small Business Development Center helped Jack Hale find the census data he needed for a U.S. Department of Agriculture business loan. Hale, a former sheriff of Sherman County, opened the Star of Texas RV Park and Horse Hotel in Stratford.
We opened in April of 2014. We have 60 RV spots, 9 33 by 120 foot corrals, and 5 single horse stalls.
So why do you think that census data is important?
For funding for anything, any taxing entity, it's important, whether it be your city, county, or school, or hospital district. They have to know exactly how many people are there for voting districts, especially because the demographics have to all match in each. We have 4 precincts in Sherman County, and they all come together in Stratford, and they need to have the equal amount of people and minorities in them. An accurate count, I can't stress how important that is to any business that wants to come in, or existing businesses. They know better how to plan for the needs of the people that are going to be doing business with them.
The better the count is, the better off we're going to be. Our region is growing a little bit slower than other parts of the state of Texas, and so an accurate count of who we have here is going to give us better numbers as far as total population. And then also numbers on low to moderate income individuals are going to be very, very beneficial to us, because those low to moderate income individuals are the ones that receive a lot of the assistance that comes from the federal government. Whether you're in Amarillo or Bovina, Texas, an accurate count of your population is going to be beneficial.